the anti-vaxxers. They are putting at risk their own kids, and they're putting at risk our kids as well. And those people are putting us all at risk. Aaron O'Toole is siding with them instead of with Canadians who did their part and stepped up. Canadians have shown it in being there for each other. And I am not going to back down no matter how many of them show up to try and shout us down. So shame on you, Aaron O'Toole. You need to condemn those people. And that means we're going to work on vaccination certifications, on vaccination passports.
And that we work with the provinces on vaccine certifications.
If you want to get on a plane or a train in the coming months, you're going to have to be fully vaccinated. Now is the time for people who are still resistant to getting vaccinated, that there will be consequences for those people in not being able to go to a gym or a restaurant, not being able to go to a movie theater, not being able to get on a train or a plane.
Our plans to make sure that anyone on a plane or train is vaccinated, that anyone in the federal public service gets vaccinated.
And we know that the way to get through this as well is to make sure that people can go into non-essential businesses and feel safe that they're not going to catch COVID from someone next to them.
We all have an opportunity to get back a little more to normal. Except that those people who have not yet chosen to get vaccinated are putting all this at risk.
The risk posed to all of us by unvaccinated people?
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame!
Le refus d'obtempérer à cet ordre vous rend passible d'une amende pouvant aller de 1 000 à 6 000 $.
Not only are they putting at risk our kids who are still too young to get vaccinated. I have a 7-year-old who started in grade 2 just earlier this week. Very excited about it, but he's vulnerable. All of us, even if we did the right things and got vaccinated, are at risk of lockdowns because of future waves of unvaccinated.
Having us risk more lockdowns because they haven't chosen to get vaccinated yet.
Please, everyone, if we can be respectful, if we can leave.
Piece of shit! Transphobic piece of shit! Transphobic piece of shit! Transphobic, where we draw the line. This is where.
In September, the federal government posted a call for expressions of interest for contractors to supply, provide, and manage quarantine isolation camps throughout every province and every territory in Canada. These quarantine isolation camps, however, are not limited to people with COVID, but provide a wide latitude for many people to be detained. Surely this government is aware of the intentions to build these isolation camps from coast to coast. And my question to the Premier is, how many of these camps will be built? And how many people does this government expect to detain?
My son is supposed to be coming in from the flight from Phoenix, and he is being detained because they didn't accept his test. They're saying it's not accurate, and they are wanting to take him to a quarantine facility. They won't let me talk to him. They won't let me see him. They won't come and talk to me. The board, they say he doesn't have a choice. They say that it's the law. They say that I don't have the right to talk to him, to see him. and they are taking him against my will and his will, and I'm not okay with it, and I don't know what to do about it, and I don't know where I'm supposed to find him. So this quarantine facility apparently is up and running and totally legal, as they say, and I'm freaking out.
Today, we're confirming an additional $23.7 million in federal funding to operate isolation sites in regions such as Toronto, Peel, York, and Durham. And we're finalizing the details for similar sites in Thunder Bay, Windsor, and other regions.
Quebec is planning to force adults that refuse a COVID vaccine to pay what's called a health contribution tax.
Those who refuse to receive their first dose in the coming weeks will have to pay a new health contribution.
We will be putting forward measures to put those tools permanently in place. The authorities of FinTrack, I believe, do need to be expanded to cover crowdsourcing platforms and payment platform and their payment providers.
Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination. Qui sont extrémistes. Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là?
So we need to rethink our notion of what terrorism is these days. Is that the point?
Well, I think be more expansive in our definition. I really see two main streams, and one is an emphasis on nationalism, also tied in with a anti-statist or anti-authoritarian perception.
And why would we call it right-wing extremism?
You know, that traditional left-right ideological spectrum, liberalism, conservatism.
A new report that really is a warning about rising online activity by right-wing extremists in Canada.
In Canada, we found that right-wing extremists were more active in 2020 than they were in 2019. The accounts belonging to right-wing extremists were more prevalent and more accessible.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his government's COVID restrictions were a frequent target of those attacks.
Well, I absolutely do think that white supremacist movements are a very real, a very grave threat to Western liberal democracy. I think they are a grave and real threat here in Canada.
The next terrorist killer in Canada is known. We can build the profile. It's a guy. He's white. And he's probably said some shit. He's probably made you feel a little bit uncomfortable with some of his comments. He might have a thing for military paraphernalia or firearms. And we need to snitch on these guys.
You want my life, Jesse Brown? You come and take it. Don't send the millennials after me on your little witch hunt.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are...
That's why I went to Ottawa. 9 out of 10 stages for genocide present in Canada right now. And apparently, the target of this little witch hunt, the profile of the next terrorist killer in Canada, is just about everybody I know who's ever bled for this country. Are you going to tell me that we weren't met with hatred?
That's a wounded veteran! Yes, that's a wounded warrior right there! They got a fucking head! They're gonna stop injuries! Hey, you don't have to hit him like that. Please.
Are you going to tell me that those cops didn't hate us?
Man being kneed there. It's terrible.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow. What is this lady doing? Trampling. Trampling horses. Trampling. Stop it. Stop it. What?
And that profile of the next terrorist killer? You're going to tell me that's by accident? I'm not so sure. Hey, what's up, troops? It's Jeff Evely here, Ops Sgt-Maj for Veterans for Freedom, back with you now this 18th day of January 2023. And I'm just going to dive right into it here, folks. Let's have a look at what we got for our philosophy meme here today. I thought I'd extend an olive branch to those progressive commie bastards out there and go with a little Confucius this morning. I studied Confucius like a little bit, like in an entry-level philosophy course there through Athabasca or something. It was East versus West, and so you learned a little bit about the Greeks. You learned a little bit of the classics, and you learned a little bit of the Eastern traditions like Wang Tzu, and Sun Tzu wasn't on there. The Art of War. I had to seek that out on my own, but Confucius was. So I wrote a couple of papers on Confucius and stuff like that. And there's lots of good stuff in there, but they're kind of like just these dictums, they're everything is presented as axiomatic, and there's no method like there is in Western philosophy. And that's kind of why I say that Western philosophy is really the only true philosophy, because it's the one that has the method, the epistemology, whereas a lot of these other ones, they're ancient wisdom, and it's kind of like just coming from some old guys that have a lot of experience with trial and error. And so there's valuable advice to be found in there. But when you're lacking the method, it just lends itself to becoming a kind of a dogma more than anything, I think. Whereas with the Western tradition, we're constantly arguing about everything. So okay, so here's Confucius, and he says, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. So not too bad, you call me bastard, and I think I say that to Confucius deservedly as well, because ultimately he is a public servant. He's a servant to the state, and that's what he advocates for. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but I think it's a shunshi or a shunsi. Basically, it means like a gentleman, or I would say it's analogous to Bertrand Russell's Magnanimous Man in the History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. But yeah, it's basically like a good man. What is the good man? What's a man? What's like the ultimate kind of the ideal man? So and in that tradition, the shunzi is a public servant. He serves the state, the king. So lends itself to Chinese communism, I think, very well. And they do set up Confucius Institutes in our universities all over the world, and then use them as a proxy to engage in some gangster diplomacy when it comes to like leveraging students, like they're Chinese-born students, and blackmailing them, threatening their relatives and stuff like that. Okay, so here's something in the Western tradition. This is Socrates. He's the granddaddy of the Enlightenment, and he says, "Be the kind of person that you want people to think you are." And that's Socrates, who he's what I think is interesting about him is we find that he's in the tradition of dying at the hands of the state, like just kind of allowing it to happen. That's something that we see repeated in certain patterns. Like, I would say Jesus Christ is an example of that, but there's an important distinction to be made there, because Jesus is a midlifer at the time of his crucifixion, whereas Socrates is is in his old age. He's about 70. And I think that Socrates follows a nomad archetype because he went to war as a young man and then lived through the great crisis of the occupation. I can't remember what they called it, but it was basically, it's like 13 families or something that occupied, the Spartans occupied Athens. And anyway, and then as an old man, the nomad is the one who kind of spends their adult life being punctuated by war. When they go off into old age, they get to see sort of the next generation of prophets, the smelly hippie generation coming up as young people. And Socrates was the one who was kind of saying, you know, this young generation is going to be a problem. And it's very much, I think, analogous to what not Thomas Paine, but the other one, Thomas Jefferson, said in his old age too, when he and the Civil War guys, they tended to retire as like gristly old mountain men and stuff like that. And Thomas Jefferson was the one who was in his old age. He said, you know, it kind of seems like we fought the revolution for nothing, and the generations that are coming up now, they don't know how good they have it, and they're probably going to be the ones to waste it. And I'm going to throw to a comment here because I saw somebody throwing in here. Claude is asking, will V4F come stand with fellow Canadians this February on the Hill? It would be an honor to have vets there once again. You know, I'm not sure what the event is that we're talking about. And I'm just going to say, like, there's quite a bit of drama out there in the freedom movement right now that I'm steering clear of. I've commented on it in the past, but no specific, you know, individuals or anything like that. I just kind of, I don't want to, I don't know, punch down, I guess, when things are kind of going rough. But yeah, I don't know what the event is. I can imagine that there's going to be some kind of an event on the Hill around 18 February to commemorate the anniversary of the fall of Canada, when the state came in and beat up a bunch of peaceful protesters for disagreeing with Justin Trudeau. Well, really, it's more like Janet Charette and Jody Thomas. You know, it's the behind the scenes folks, the people that are running our institutions, that are really kind of driving it. PCO, the Privy Council office, the PMO, Prime Minister's office. They're setting up like intelligence gathering operations there in the Prime Minister's office these days, apparently. So that's concerning. And for the purposes of spying on Canadians, not foreigners. Yeah, I can't speak to like the individual event. I don't know the organizers or anything like that. I personally cannot go to Ottawa. I'm not allowed. I got arrested during the convoy, and so my conditions said that I can't return to the downtown core, and that's still kind of hanging over my head. And actually, I did return to the downtown core for Rolling Thunder, and so I was rearrested, and they expanded the territory to which I could not return from the downtown core to the greater Ottawa area. So anyway, I can't go past the Aylmer sign. But anyway, like, I'm supportive of anybody out there that's doing the right thing and taking it to the man at this point. That's for sure. But I personally won't be there, and I'm sure that plenty of guys with Veterans for Freedom flags and T-shirts and stuff will be in attendance, whatever it is. Assuming it's not some trap set by like a false flag. I'm always talking about false flags and stuff because that's what they tried to do in Ottawa. They tried to false flag us. January 6th was a false flag, but January 6th was pre-planned. That was a date that they knew ahead of time, and they drew down all the security forces and refused assistance from the National Guard that was offered by Donald Trump. And then Ray Epps, he incited the breach on one side of the Capitol, while on the other side of the Capitol, the police actually held the doors open for peaceful protesters to walk in and take a tour of the Capitol, and then they arrested them for trespassing, and some of them have been held for over a year now, they were held for over a year. I think there are still some that are still waiting to get this cleared up, being held in egregious conditions. So they tried to do that to us in Ottawa, but the thing about Ottawa was that it wasn't pre-planned. It was organic, so they caught flat-footed, and then the media went into high gear trying to smear us while we were there on the ground, as opposed to, and ahead of time too. Yeah, they tried to smear us as the bad guys, and then they clamped down. They tried to incite violence, I think,
The way they went around beating everybody up, it's just amazing that nobody threw any punches back. I give my hats off to everybody who was there, who just took the beating, because that's what Socrates would do. Just take the beating. Just show these people what the state is really like at this point in time. And that's what Socrates did. Is he took he accepted his fate, his death sentence, which was he drank the hemlock, and the hemlock is like it's a potion. It's like a lethal injection of its day. It's a numbing agent combined with a poison, and it's a painless death kind of thing. And he just accepted it, even though he could have fled, and he had plenty of influential friends who would have helped him. Anyway, yeah. So as far as whatever's going on for rallies and stuff like that, I know the 1 year anniversary is coming up like that. I'm always concerned about false flags, number one. So I'm trying to be vigilant against that kind of thing when it comes to attending events, and also like, I don't know if I'm not sure which event that we're actually talking about here, or a name or whatever, but sounds cool. I can't go. So let's see. Here's the meme of the day. We have the NPC. I'm not sure what this guy's name is. He's got a name though, and he's got a Commie red star here. That's the 5-point red star. That's on the North Korean flag. It's a communist red star, like the Toronto Star. And he's got the hammer and sickle in there. So this is a commie guy with a commie beret on, and he's saying, "You're just a fascist, transphobic, bigot, Nazi, racist, homophobic, alt-right, far-right, incel, chud." And then we've got the V4F Chad over here on the right, and he says, LOL. Okay. And now we've got this beta cuck here. He's got a frowny face, and then he busts into tears and says, "Why doesn't that work anymore?" Yeah, so that's I think probably the tact right now that everybody should be taking is just show them what class looks like. That's the thing. I mean, these people have been like utterly classless for so long, and I think that if we just kind of respond, with a kind of a higher level dignity, a dignified response, then they'll just fall apart. And truth, of course. The truth bombs. I'm a big advocate of truth bombs, radical candor, and whatnot. Okay, so here's the progressive propaganda. It's getting pathetic at this point, but here's CNBC. I mean, not at this point. It's been pathetic for a while, but I think that it's particularly sad in light of how much more awakened people are to the fact that it's propaganda. It's desperate, So here's Greta Thunberg arrested at German coal mine protest. Will be freed later, police say. And there's just a few points here. And this is it says climate campaigner Greta Thunberg was detained with other activists during protests against the demolition of a German coal village in Lützerath. I don't know if that's good German or not. But let's see. The Swedish activist was held while protesting at the open cast coal mine of Jarsweiler 2, where she sat with a group of protesters near the edge of the mine. The entire group will be released later in the day, according to police. And here we have Greta, and she's smiling. She's got a nice little content grin on her face while she's, I don't know, where is she handcuffed? In front of her lap there? That looks pretty comfortable. That's not where they cuffed me. And they're carrying her out in a little kind of human cradle, 3 of them. So it says climate campaigner Greta Thunberg was detained alongside other activists on Tuesday during the protest against the demolition of the coal village Lützerath, but the entire group will be released later in the day, according to police. Quote, "There is no reason to hold them for days. It might take hours or they will go immediately," close quote. A spokesperson for regional police in Aachen said, speaking about the whole group of demonstrators. Thunberg was held while processing at the open cast coal mine of Garzweiler 2, some 9 kilometers, 5.6 miles from Lützerath, where she sat with a group of protesters near the edge of the mine. The clearing of the village in the western state of North Rhine-Westphalia was agreed between, is that right-wing extremists, RWE, and the government in a deal that allowed energy giant to demolish Lutzerat in exchange for its faster exit from coal and saving 5 villages originally slated for destruction. Activists have said Germany should not be mining any more lignite and should focus on expanding renewable energy instead. Riot police backed by bulldozers removed activists from buildings in the village with only a few left in trees in an underground tunnel by last weekend. But protesters, including Thunberg, remained at the site, staging a sit-in into Tuesday. Thunberg was seen sitting alone in a large police bus after having been detained, a Reuters witness said. Quote, we are going to use force to bring you to the identity check, so please cooperate, close quote. Policemen said to the group, according to Reuters footage. Quote, Greta Thunberg was part of a large group of activists who rushed toward the ledge. However, she was then stopped and carried by us with a group out of the immediate danger area to establish their identity, close quote. A spokesperson for the Action Police told Reuters, adding one activist had jumped into the mine. Okay, well, so that's what the propaganda is saying today. I think that's enough of that. And then we have Ian Miles Chong here. He's pretty good on Twitter there at Stingray. So give him a follow. And he says, yes, Greta Thunberg arrest was staged for the establishment media. So here it is.
You also want those for you, man?
Yeah.
Wie sieht's denn aus mit der Abadstraße?
Police weren't that nice in Ottawa, that's for sure. Look at this. Unreal. Okay. Here's Russell Brand, and he has a few things to say about Ukraine. And I'm going to fill this out with a little bit too. I'm just going to let him go for a few minutes here. It's like a 20-minute clip. I think it's like one of his whole episodes or something, but we're really tracking close on the Ukraine Zelensky stuff. So let's see what he's got to say today.
Today's story is that BlackRock and Zelensky have done a deal to reconstruct Ukraine after the war. Who's going to benefit from this situation? And does that present us with the possibility to inquire about the origins of this war, the nature of this war, the funding of this war in a way that in any way contradicts the Putin is evil, Russia is bad, their invasion is criminal, all of which is bloody true. But surely the best way to handle things is openly and honestly. Is it? Tell me in the chat, tell me in the comments. Let's get into this thing. Last week, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed to coordinate investment efforts to reconstruct Ukraine. Let's coordinate these investment efforts. What do you mean we could conspire together how to do them? No, not conspire, just collaborate. And again, I'm not saying that Zelensky is anything other than a heroic leader of Ukraine. I'm saying that BlackRock's involvement in the reconstruction of Ukraine means it's ultimately going to be profitable because the investment company BlackRock don't do things that aren't profitable the same way as Pfizer don't do things that aren't profitable. And if you have the media unwilling to give you balanced reporting on a subject upon which massive, powerful interests stand to substantially benefit, maybe this is just another one of those crises that's hugely profitable for some of the world's most powerful interests. But what they're trying to do is humanitarian, like the pandemic. By accident, it was really profitable for everyone. But what they were trying to do was help. And then just by accident, they're just like sort of someone from a fairy tale, just wandering down the street, helping people, and just a load of gold ends up in their pocket. Volodymyr Zelensky and Larry Fink agreed to focus in the near term on coordinating the efforts of all potential investors and participants in the reconstruction of our country, channeling investment into the most relevant and impactful sectors of the Ukrainian economy. If I try to be devil's advocate, and I mean the devil, for a moment, of course, after a war, Ukraine is going to require reconstruction. But don't you remember, like about 20 years ago, Iraq, after the Iraq war, required reconstruction, and like Halliburton were right there to sort it out, weren't they? And to profit from it and had relationships with people. Do you think that in the last 20 years, things have got so much better and more honest? There's so much more transparency now, isn't there? There's so much more access to secret files and such a lack of ability to surveil surveil and censor. But obviously, nothing like that could ever happen again. Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments. Critics have complained that BlackRock's new role in Ukraine could draw accusations of corruption. When did you become so cynical, man? With some noting that the company's managing director, Eric Van Nostrand, was hired straight into a senior advisory position in the Biden administration's Treasury Department just this past August, explicitly to shape US economic policy on Russia and Ukraine. Oh, you think just because the company's managing director, Eric Van Nostrand, was hired straight into a senior advisory position in Biden's administration, and now BlackRock are actually going to be actively involved in the reconstruction of Ukraine, that there's some sort of corruption? Eric Van Nostrand is a party coordinator that we booked to give you the best birthday party ever, and all BlackRock has ever wanted is for you to be happy. Others have noted that BlackRock is a top beneficial owner of shares in major arms manufacturers who are reaping immense profits from the war in Ukraine, with tens of billions invested in Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be spending a lot of American taxpayer dollars on buying arms to defend Ukraine from Russia, which will obviously escalate this conflict, meaning Ukraine will suffer critical damages and will need reconstruction. Oh my God, that's going to be expensive. Yes, that's part of the beauty of the plan, because we sell the weapons that mean that they get more bombed, and then when they need to rebuild Ukraine, guess who rebuilds it? Someone else? No, not someone else. Us! And guess who funds it? Someone else? Yeah, someone else. But BlackRock are not just profiting from the war in Ukraine that you're funding, they're also profiting from your poverty in the housing market as well. So whether it's in foreign overseas wars that America are not involved in, or in your inability to afford a home, BlackRock are benefiting. Here's how. A report from the Wall Street Journal over the summer claimed that BlackRock was one of several major investment firms causing distortion in the housing market. The report laid out how BlackRock and firms like it are using their massive amounts of capital to buy up single-family houses, jacking up prices in the process. So if you can't afford a home, if you suddenly find yourself owning nothing and not being quite so happy, recognize that's not just happened by accident, it's happened because of a convergence of interests has orchestrated it. In Houston, for example, the billionaire Fink reportedly accounts for 1/4 of recent home purchases. He's simply buying up entire neighborhoods and using them as rentals. BlackRock is helping create a permanent renters class, though it's long been understood that home ownership is one of the key elements to building wealth and maintaining the American middle class. When we spend all of our time arguing about the culture war, arguing about whether your values are traditional or progressive, arguing whether you want to be left alone because you're libertarian or you want to be left alone to identify in whatever way you want to identify, do you note that there is not much mainstream coverage of BlackRock acquiring entire neighborhoods, negatively impacting the housing market for ordinary Americans? Not only are the government not representing you by preventing something that could be prevented through the exertion of democratic power, if democratic power meant a centralized authority that acts on behalf of the people, that's what I thought it was meant to be, I don't know. Not only do they not do that, they're also employing party planner and friend to the poor, Eric Van Nostrand, to work right in the heart of the organization. That's how tightly the convergences interlock. It's a lockstep system that disempowers you. So BlackRock gets paid by US taxpayers via the Ukrainian government to devise a plan that ensures the success of their future investments in Ukraine, made from money gained by making American housing unaffordable. With a deal like that for our financial and political elite, why would they ever want peace? Yeah, why would they? Why would they ever want peace? They're benefiting from every single angle. How many times do we do stories on this channel? Tell me, can you count them up? I'd love the research. Where it's like, oh, you pay for it when it's being funded, and then when it comes to the profits, you don't participate. How's that free market? How's that free market capitalism? That's communism right up until the bit where there's money involved. Then you lot, F off. In case you think you're listening to the words of a madman who was once in the film Sarah Marshall, have a look at Mitch McConnell, who I don't believe was in that film.
And let's be clear. The reason that a big bipartisan majority of the American people and a big bipartisan majorities in Congress support continuing to assist Ukraine is not primarily about inspiring speeches.
Well, if I can see that, it's the boring person I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, we don't call him Cocaine Mitch for nothing.
You're like a grey ice cream melting into my mind.
President Zelensky is an inspiring leader, but the most basic reasons for continuing to help Ukraine degrade and defeat the Russian invaders are cold, hard, practical American interests.
Actually, you've got to respect that. I thought they were covering it up. I thought we discovered it, but they're actually just saying it on the television. Cold, hard, practical American interest. When they say American, you might think, well, I'm American. They don't mean that. They don't mean you. You're not going to benefit. In fact, it's going to be worse for you because you're not going to be able to afford houses because BlackRock will use their investments elsewhere to bias housing markets not in your favor. There is no America. There's an elite strata of people that benefit from these things. And then there's American people and English people and Senegalese people and people all over the world getting royally fucked.
Helping.
Okay, I think, Russell's helping to make a good point here. And I just want to throw a couple of things in on that. I like how he's highlighting the idea that we have, we all share in the costs of funding these projects. And this has been the case for a long time. It's kind of a problem that we need to work out, like infrastructure projects, for example. Walmart benefits from an infrastructure project that we all pay for. When it comes to the roadways to get Walmart, and we all benefit from that. So, but then when it comes to the profits, like they reap the benefits of that improved traffic flow to their business, and we don't share in those profits. So it was kind of like that before. Like that was the kind of thing, the level of unfairness that we were dealing with historically, and then with the pandemic and the decision to exploit it. By our political class, we have, a next level, I guess, in this particular area. So, and the other thing is the generational lens that I'm always throwing over this. Larry Fink, boomer. So it is that investment class with this is where the real estate speculation really started. And it was Boomer Clinton there who deregulated the housing market. He removed the Glass-Steagall Act that was put in place after the previous market collapse to protect Americans from this kind of thing happening again. And basically what that allowed to do is it allowed all the bondsmen, the investors, to buy up all of these mortgages and consolidate them into a single bond. And theoretically, it's like the yield goes up and the risk stays the same, but that removes a level of accountability from the brokers themselves. And so they just started giving bad mortgages and everybody was getting rich. But a lot of bad loans were given. And in the end, like they rode that bubble all the way to peak institutional power in the markets. And when they hit the top in 2008, the bubble burst and the whole system came down. And then for the first time in history, the taxpayer, the American taxpayer, all funded the bailout. They were the ones that really, they were the only ones that were accountable in that situation. And they bore that hardship of funding the loss. And the CEOs, the boomer CEOs, used that bailout to pay themselves bonuses while they laid off all the other generations working in the trades. And I've been talking about the Canada Pension Plan and how it's gone predatory. Like a lot of these big investment firms, and the Canada Pension Plan is basically that. It's like a hedge fund, So and they become predatory in this way. We saw that in the early pandemic. The Canada Pension Fund was going out there scooping up all the residential property there and turning the millennials into a permanent renting class. And when I'm hearing things about affordable housing projects these days, I'm hearing about projects for rental properties. So it does seem to be the plan here to turn everybody else into renters. And this is the generation that was handed like the highest standard of living in human history, the most accessible middle class of any generation in history. And they've taken that housing market that was created by the investment classes that went up ahead of them and started using it to exploit the generations coming up behind them. So and turn them into permanent renters. And as we can see, pharmacological livestock and debt serfs. So here we have, and it's a fourth turning, folks. I'm talking about the fourth turning. Hashtag the boomers must be stopped. It's a leadership crisis, not a health crisis. It's a generational archetype that is raised in the wake of the previous great crisis, in this case, World War II. And when they reach peak institutional power, they tyrannize us, just like World War II, just like the American Civil War, the American Revolution, 4 generational intervals going all the way back to the Garden of Eden, as far as I can tell. So here's Anomaly. He's a pretty prominent, content creator, and he's been around for a few years. He was pretty good since about, I think he came on the scene, like he started getting prominent around 2016, 2017, something like that. And he says, is this the type of people Zelensky is banning from Ukraine while he criminalizes LGBTQ, quote, hate speech, close quote? Just wondering. So, yeah, that's very succinctly put. And we have Greg Price commenting here, and he says, quote, I respect everybody and I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. And this is the Flyers defenseman, Ivan Provorov, I guess. I'm not a hockey guy. I'm not a sports guy at all. Sorry. On refusing to wear a rainbow jersey for warm-ups during, quote, Pride Night, close quote, due to his Russian Orthodox faith. So this guy wouldn't bend the knee, wouldn't, wouldn't show his fealty to the cult by putting on the jersey here. And well,
everybody, I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say. Like I said, that's all I'm going to comment on that. If you have any hockey questions, I would answer those.
Can you just clarify what your religion?
Russian Orthodox.
So with the game tonight, Ivan, obviously Kevin Hayes got a hat trick and Rasmus's first goal of the season. Can you walk us through the emotion that the team is feeling in that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody, I respect everybody's choices.
Yeah, I'm just going to say good job on Ivan here. Not a hockey fan again, guys. I don't watch any sports anymore. I used to watch MMA, but now it's like pro wrestling. It's all the smack talk and stuff like that. And I don't know, not a fan. So yeah, I like the way that he handled this. Like, he was very like he wasn't meek. He stood firm, but he was kind of like the firm, fair, friendly, and he just said, well, look, this violates a principle of mine. It's my faith. I'm just taking a principled stand. And I don't really want to talk about, like, I'm not here to talk about my faith. Okay. This is personal and private stuff. He was willing to say that he was not Greek Orthodox, but Russian Orthodox, which, is Greek Orthodox, as far as I understand. It's it's sort of an offshoot of that. After the fall of Constantinople, I think is when it made its way there. But but yeah, he gives them a pretty good hard boundary, but it's a soft delivery. And then near the end, like when he says, like, I'm willing to talk about hockey. And
Rasmus's first goal of the season. Can you walk us through the emotion that the team is feeling in that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody.
Yeah, you see, and he just lights right up there. I don't have it's only a short clip here, but yeah, as soon as they start respecting, he's got a boundary here that he's expressed, and he's saying, I'm not going to engage on that. They say, okay, let's talk about hockey. And then he just lights right up and says, basic game theory, right? It's, if you're going to be shitty to me, I'll be shitty to you. And if you're going to be good to me, then I'll be extra good to you. So, well done. Okay. And there we go. Now, over to Canada, we have True North, and this is just the Daily Brief here. So this is Anthony Furia's podcast, The Daily Brief, if you want to go check him out. And it's just like a couple of quick bullet points here, but they're saying the Upper Prince Gospel Chapel of Rose Prairie, North BC is the latest church in Canada to have been set ablaze and destroyed. Meanwhile, the 49-year-old man in custody after he allegedly attempted to set fire to St. Paul's Presbyterian Church in Hamilton. Plus, okay, so a recent uptick in crimes committed by offenders out on bail. A sharply worded letter from Canada's Premier, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, says his government is carefully looking at the proposal for reforms in the country's bail system. So, yeah, that's a bit of that came up in the Twitter sphere there today. Churches. Well, what was it? It was over 50 churches, I think, all told, after the Kamloops, the Kamloops Commie color revolution connection. We did a podcast on that with William Ray, where we discussed the tactic, the color revolution. It's a tactic that we've seen elsewhere, like the Orange Revolution in Ukraine back in the 90s, 2000s, and all very much in line with what I've been talking about in terms of the PSYOP, the art of war, and what V4F is always saying about fifth generational warfare. They shame us. They shame us for our culture. In the U.S., it was the fentanyl overdose of George Floyd that they exploited the history of slavery, which is a common history for all of humanity, of course. And it was only banned in Canada like 3 years before it was banned in the U.S. And the first country was only 2 years before that, and that was the Netherlands. So within 5 years of the first country in the world being the Netherlands to ban slavery, the United States had wrapped up the bloodiest war in its entire history by the raw numbers, and not just per capita, but what was it, over 600,000 dead? Or am I exaggerating? Is this? Yeah, I think it is 600,000. So anyway, and in Canada, the George Floyd stuff doesn't really resonate with people. It didn't get any traction here with respect to that. So they came out with the Kamloops mass grave hoax, and True North has reported on this in the past as well. There hasn't been a single body exhumed there. And we talked about the technology that was used on our podcast here with William Ray, and the ground penetrating radar that they're saying produced this report. And it's really more like a hobbyist's level of ground penetrating radar that is more akin to something like a metal detector than something that you would use for something of this importance. And normally we would expect to see anthropologists and forensic scientists combing over the site and figuring out what happened. But and this was all part of what we said we were going to do with in the Truth and Reconciliation report. So if there are lost graveyards, because that's what we were looking for, was lost graveyards, not mass graves, as in buried with care and probably with a wooden cross that doesn't exist anymore. So that's what they were looking for, and they went with the mass graves narrative. And then we saw over 50 churches in Canada burned, and it looks like this is still ongoing, and a lot of people don't realize that there's no real evidence for a mass grave at the Kamloops school. So, all right, the hashtag ban Taliban was trending this morning. So we've reported on this here before. I showed some video that was coming out of Afghanistan a couple of weeks ago, I think, where a little girl was crying at home because she's not allowed to go to school. And that's how the Taliban they roll. They shoot little girls if they catch them going to school. That's Malala Yousafzai was a Nobel Prize winning girl that came out of Afghanistan who was shot in the face by a Taliban who then bravely ran away. And she went on to, write a book and accept a Nobel Peace Prize. And it was effectively a little bit too jihadi for my taste, but it's still a win. I still count that one as a win. For the good guys, for us in Afghanistan. So here we have, from the Islamic point of view, this is Sarwar Mohammadi. And from the Islamic point of view, knowing knowledge is a presumption for men and women. Death to the religion of Islam, that is a terrorist group, has introduced us. What did she say? It says death to the religion of Islam. That is, this terrorist group has introduced to us in order to deprive us of knowledge. Stop the Haraza genocide and ban the Taliban. So I'm not sure who this person is, but anyway, that's an interesting choice of phraseology. All women banned from university in Afghanistan, Taliban says. So that's BBC News. And here's another one here. We've got some child soldiers. Hard to say, if this is really current or not. Depends, I guess, on where they are, but so, as you can see there's a discussion here on the BBC. I think this is BBC, they're reporting. And I think he's saying that they might be able to attend school if they have a hijab on. So anyway,
they are entrepreneurs. What guarantees can you give to women in Afghanistan that this will continue but be better under the Taliban? Can you make that guarantee?
We are not against education of women and their work, but only we want that they should do this in an Islamic way or hijab.
Women have jobs, they run businesses.
There you go. So whatever you do, you better cover up, I guess. Ladies, that's what they're saying anyway. That's not me. Here we are in Canada, and Common Sensica is saying, Tualdo is saying that it's not a federal responsibility to enforce the Canada Health Act. It is. Stop deflecting. He just said it. So this is something that's trending here in Canada right now. It's the Canada Health Act because Doug Ford is talking about allowing clinicians to run private clinics where they deal directly with patients and bill them directly and stuff like this. And so this is blasphemous in the commie cult of Canadian healthcare. As you can see, the usual witch hunting types are out being hysterical. And this is CPAC. She's sharing a tweet, and the CPAC says, it is one of the primary responsibilities of the federal government in matters of healthcare delivery to ensure that the Canada Health Act is always protected, says PM Trudeau as he responds to Ontario's decision to allow more surgical procedures at for-profit clinics. So Trudeau warning, here he comes.
Announced they're spending nearly $20 million for for-profit clinics for surgeries. If the federal government gives more money to provinces for healthcare, will you mandate that it be spent in the public system? And do you have a problem with provinces using for-profit clinics for surgeries and other healthcare?
It is one of the primary responsibilities of the federal government in matters of healthcare delivery to ensure that the Canada Health Act is always respected. That's what we're going to continue to watch across the country as people are responding in different ways to delivering better services to Canadians in healthcare. We know how important it is to continue to invest in our healthcare systems. And I've had some great conversations with a number of premiers, including Premier Ford, and Premier Moe has been working very, very hard as well as part of a small group looking at improving healthcare across the country. And I can say we're all very much on the same page. There is a need for more money. There is a need for more delivery of results for families, whether we're talking about more access to primary care doctors and teams, whether it's quicker access to mental health supports, whether it's reducing the surgery backlog. There are lots of things that we're working on with the provinces, and I look forward to being able to announce positive steps forward in the very near future.
Yeah, so boilerplate of talking points as usual. And so this is iPolitics. This was floating around out there with the same hashtag. It was the Canada Health Act trend, and they're saying. So this is what I'm trying to understand here. I'm like, what are they freaking out about? Maybe I need to understand this argument a little bit better. But they're saying Health Canada concerned about Ontario company that charges for virtual doctor visits. And now this, I think, is really crossing a line, because if it wasn't for Maple, I wouldn't get access to my prescriptions. I'm in Nova Scotia, and man, oh man, I'm still waiting for my health card to come in the mail. Let alone I got to go put my foot in some asses there over at the bureaucracy. They do it by mail too. It's snail mail. I was like, why don't you just set up a web portal? And because I said that, now they didn't send my health card in the mail, because that's what bureaucrats are like. They're pernicious and resentful and vindictive. So so they're going after this app, and it's an app on my phone. And I'm like, don't do that. I need that because I live in Nova Scotia and there aren't any doctors here. So here's, and this is a federal act, right? It's the Canada Health Act. So if they're saying that this app is illegal under the Canada Health Act, then I'm out of a doctor and medication. So it says Health Canada concerned about the Ontario company that charges for virtual doctor visits. Maple charges $69 for a general practitioner visit, even for people covered by OHIP. And OHIP is Ontario Health, I don't know, something. That's their health plan. So And I know most of you are from Ontario, so you know that. But anyway, it says Health Canada is reiterating that it expects provinces to fund medically necessary health services as one company raises fears of two-tiered health care in Ontario. Maple, a Loblaw-funded virtual care business based in Toronto, charges $69 per visit or $30 per month for 30 visits per year, a service that would be free in person. Canada Health Act requires provincial and territorial health insurance plans to cover, quote, all medically necessary services, close quote, Health Canada spokesperson Anne Jeannier said in a statement. That is a quote mine. I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler here because I'm going to go into the Canada Health Act, and I didn't go into the Canada Health Act really before this morning, so I'm not purporting to be any kind of an expert, but it's not hard to debunk a lot of what they're saying. Anyway, back to the article. Charging Ontarians for insured services is banned by provincial legislation in accordance with the Canada Health Act. Banned by provincial legislation in accordance with the Canada Health Act. Oh, well, that's interesting. We can't see that. So, Ontario Health Insurance Plan. Okay, I'm not going to dive into that because that's just for the folks in Ontario. But here's the Canada Health Act. I want to see what these people are freaking out. So this is Canada Health Act. It's right from Canada Justice Law's website. And yeah, okay. So here's like the definition section. I'm going to scroll back down to where I was just a second ago. And okay, so I'll read the primary objective. So primary objective of Canadian healthcare policy. It is hereby declared that the primary objective of Canadian healthcare policy is to protect, promote, and restore the physical and mental well-being of residents of Canada and to facilitate reasonable access to healthcare without financial or other barriers. So to facilitate reasonable access without financial or other barriers. Got it. Okay, and then the criteria by which they're going to accomplish that. So here's the big section here where the program criteria. In order that a province may qualify for a full cash contribution referred to in Section 5 for a fiscal year, the healthcare insurance plan of the province must, throughout the fiscal year, satisfy the criteria described in Sections 8 to 12 respecting the following matters. A, public administration. B, comprehensiveness. C, universality. D, portability. And E, accessibility. So I guess they're making the universality argument. We covered that here. Was it yesterday? I was showing the clip from CBC where some portly harridan of a propagandist was snorting at this public health official about how we have universal healthcare in Canada, and so if you have a two-tier system, it's not universal anymore. You go against the universality, and I think they're also making the accessibility argument. Like portability is just okay. I can move from province to province, and I'll have access to healthcare, but that's it. And of course, the system is publicly administered. It's comprehensiveness, so well explained and complete. I guess it's it's fullness. It's a complete system. So, all right. So universality, portability. So universality is the one I think that they're going after the most here. Maybe not the accessibility so much. So let's take a look down. And they get into what we're talking about here. So universality, it says, in order to satisfy the criterion respecting universality, the healthcare insurance plan of a province must entitle 100% of the insured persons of the province to the insured health services provided for by the plan in uniform terms and conditions. So when they're talking about a violation of the Canada Health Act, I don't see this, private healthcare violating the universality criterion because it pertains specifically to the healthcare insurance plan of a province. So if they have private clinics operating outside of that, that insurance plan, then where's the violation? The universality really only pertains to the insurance plan itself. So the portability, I don't see that as being anything applicable here, but requirement for the consent for elective insured health services permitted. Elective insured accessibility. All right, let's get a look at the accessibility here. In order to satisfy the criteria respecting accessibility, the healthcare insurance plan of a province, A, must provide for insured health services in uniform terms and conditions and on a basis that does not impede or preclude, either directly or indirectly, whether by charges made to insured persons or otherwise, reasonable access to those services by insured persons. So you must provide for insured health services, and then the rest of it is the terms by which you must provide those insured health services. So all of this pertains to those insured health services. So again, if you set up a private clinic, I don't see that interfering with the insured health services. Okay, so B, this is the criteria on B under accessibility. Must provide for payment of insured health services in accordance with a tariff or a system of payment authorized by the law of the province. So yeah, okay, if you go to a clinic and you access the services that are authorized under the plan, then the province pays for it. Again, nothing a private clinic is going to interfere with there. C, must provide for reasonable compensation for all insured health services rendered by medical practitioners or dentists. Reasonable compensation for all insured health services rendered by medical practitioners or dentists. That sounds pretty broad, but reasonable compensation is also broad. So what constitutes reasonable compensation for insured health services? And if you set up a private clinic, that's not blocking reasonable compensation for all insured services. It's not really interfering with that, because you can still go to, those crappy insured services and wait 6 months to get access, interfering with somebody's ability to get in a waiting line. And yeah, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing a violation there. So must provide for the payment of amounts to hospitals, including hospitals owned or operated by Canada, in respect to the cost of insured health services. Okay, so there you go. Same thing. It's all pertaining to these insured health services. So if you set up private services that are not covered under the insured health services bucket, then how is that interfering with anything to do with those crappy long line insured health services? So anyway, okay, so here's reasonable compensation, but I'm not gonna beat that one to death. You guys can go read the Canada Health Act yourselves. And we have I see a couple of comments coming in, and we're seeing, let's see, Darlene is saying, start learning about natural remedies and plants for our immune systems. Yeah, I'm all about, a healthy diet and exercise, get outside. I have my husky. He gets me out like a couple of times a day for a good walk. So meditation and proper self-care, that kind of stuff. I think the strategy going forward for Canadians is going to be one of avoiding doctor visits. It's going to be a lot of self-care, a lot of prevention. What is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So there's not a pound of cure to be had between all the people in Canada. So we better start accumulating more ounces of prevention. So here's Canada performing more organ transplants from the May donors than any other country in the world. So that's gross. And I'm not going to bother to read the article. They have a little bit of a segment here on the video portion. So here you go, guys.
John Scully is about to do something he's wanted to do for years. Try to end his life.
I just said, I've had enough of this. It was just a cold, simple decision. I've got to stop this. And the only way to stop this is to kill myself.
But before the overdose can kill him, he calls his wife and says goodbye. Panicked, she phones 911 and he's rushed to hospital to have his stomach pumped. And when you woke up, you had an interaction with the physician.
He said, "Why did you do this? Was this a call for help?" And I wanted to punch the guy. A cry for help? No, I wanted to die.
That was 2006. Since then, John has tried to kill himself again. After each suicide attempt, doctors and nurses revived him. That's what they're supposed to do when someone wants to end their life. But now some say that is about to change.
We're ready.
You ready to begin?
Yeah.
At first, only Canadians like Ray Cole were allowed to have a medically assisted death. W5 was at his bedside in February 2022, when with the help of a doctor and his wife by his side, he started the drugs to end his life. He had terminal cancer with just months to live. Medical assistance in dying, or MAID, became legal for patients like him in 2016.
Got it?
I'm good to go.
Safe travels, my friend.
Goodbye, my friends. I love you guys.
5 years later, the law changed to include people with chronic illnesses like John Priddle. He wasn't dying, but qualified because he had an incurable physical illness with an advanced state of decline and intolerable suffering.
It would give me quite a bit of peace of mind to realize that it's not just an option, but medical assistance and die may be there if I think I need it.
If you need it.
At 81, John Scully's high blood pressure won't make him eligible for an assisted death, but his PTSD and depression soon will. Canada's MAID law is about to change again. In 2023, those with mental illnesses as a sole underlying condition will become eligible, and John says he'll be among the first in line to apply. A man who spent most of his life trying to stay alive in war zones is now pushing for his right to end it.
There were bodies on the streets, bodies in the rivers.
For over 60 years, this award-winning TV news producer worked behind the scenes. In some of the most violent and dangerous places in the world, like for W5 on stories on the conflicts in the Middle East.
All the time I was suppressing it with these adrenaline rushes of going to wars. I've been to 78 countries and 35 war zones.
But the horrors took a toll.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, yeah.
In 1986, he was diagnosed with severe depression, followed by post-traumatic stress disorder. Tell me what it's like to suffer from chronic mental illness.
Incurable mental illness is my definition. I wake up sick and loathing the day that's to come. I'm in fear of the day that's to come because during the night I've had horrific nightmares and anxiety dreams that fill me with sweat and dread.
Did any treatment?
Okay, so having said all of that, I think I would like to offer this guy some mushrooms. Yeah, I think we see where this is all going, folks. We've already had several veterans offered, made. There was some acknowledgement initially, and then they turned around and said, no, it never happened. First they said that we were going to look into it, and then they came out and said, yeah, none of that ever happened, and these people are lying. And there's an incentive to do all of this stuff. These are publicly funded programs too, but they're also for-profit pharmaceuticals. And as we're always being told, as the veterans are being told, the cost of treating people to manage their anxieties, their disorders, their PTSD, and it's not that it's incurable, I think, that really crosses the line when it comes to medical assistance in dying, because it's supposed to be assistance in dying, as in you are dying and we're going to make it easier for you, assist it. Not, not you have great challenges, and, not to make light of anybody's challenges, but I just think that this is a denigration of human dignity, of a devaluation of human life. To step over this line here, we're not helping people to die. It's not merciful. I think it would be more merciful to help people to better manage their conditions. So here's Gerald Butts. We're all a big fan of this guy around here, and he says he's responding to the Canadian the Canadian millionaire financial coach. That's at Jim Wong, and he says, this is what you will pay on a $1 million salary in Ontario, Canada. Gross income, $1 million. Federal tax, $307,320. Provincial tax, $190,919. Canada pension plan, $3,500. Employment insurance, $953. Total tax, $500,000 to $692. And then the net pay is $497,308. Welcome to Ontario, Canada. So yeah, they're actually getting half of their, more than half of their total salary deducted. And Gerald Butts is saying the Canada Pension Plan and employment insurance are not taxes, and a salaried employee with no tax deductions making $1 million is as real as a Sasquatch. Well, Sasquatch. Okay, so people are all over him here on Twitter, which is good to see. And Brandon Ellis is replying. He says, "I agree with the Prime Minister. They're a direct payroll tax." And here's Justin Trudeau.
Mr. Speaker, we have crowdsourced over 3,000 questions from Canadians across the country for the Prime Minister on economic challenges facing the middle class. I want to ask the Prime Minister a question I received from Dustin in Calgary. His question is specifically about his EI premiums, which are rising by $50 this year, a direct payroll tax increase. Dustin would
Just sorry, I'm going to throw out a comment here, guys. Sorry to interrupt, but Dwayne is saying low dose pro monitored ketamine therapy. I've heard good things about that too. Mike Rood was promoting that here on one of the podcasts that we did on mental health for veterans mental health, and he's been saying that it's a very promising therapy. So I'm not a doctor, obviously, and but a lot of guys, the guys with a lot of experience, I think, are a good source of information often, and always be careful with anybody's recommendations. Do your own research. Right? So anyway, back to this dope.
I'd like to know, why did the Prime Minister choose to raise EI premiums for him and every other working Canadian? Mr. Speaker, we have crowdsourced over 3,000 questions from Canadians across the country.
All right.
For the Prime Minister.
So, yeah, the CPP, as I've said, the thing about the Canada Pension Plan right now is like it's a Ponzi scheme. And it's a big part of why we need the economy to continue growing. It's got to grow all the time, so that the pension fund grows, because it's dependent on growth in order to function. And as a consequence, we need more immigration to meet that demand in order to fund these public pensions, because we have a very large generation, the boomer generation, that is moving into retirement. And like I said before, the Canada Pension Plan has become predatory at this point, where they're turning the millennials into All right, I just dropped right out there for a second, but I'm back. All right. Sorry, folks. Bear with me 1 second. I'll give you the share screen again, but here we go. So this is the Epoch Times, and they're reporting that FACT says not seeing vaccination status of Canadians after minister calls for better data sharing. So it's, or sorry, not seeking. I think I said seeing there, didn't I? FACT says not seeking vaccination status of Canadians after minister calls for better data sharing. So that sounds like room for optimism. This is yesterday. And here we go. It says, the federal health minister said she would seek more than COVID-19 vaccination data sharing from the provinces, but his department says it's not interested in obtaining personal level details on the vaccination status of Canadians. Quote, while the Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, is interested in vaccine uptake and coverage in Canada, the information the agency receives from the provinces and the territories is devoid of all personal information, close quote. Health Canada spokesperson Charmaine Sleeman told the Epoch Times, quote, FAC is not interested in receiving personal level information on the vaccination status of Canadians, close quote. In December, after the Auditor General released its report on Ottawa's management of the COVID-19 vaccination campaign, and while the federal and provincial governments were being pressed to address the healthcare crisis, Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos made a number of comments on the issue of sharing of the health data. Quote, the government of Canada will continue to engage provincial and territorial immunization programs to seek opportunities to further advance and enhance vaccine data sharing and COVID-19 vaccine monitoring, close quote. He said on December 6th in addressing the report from the Auditor General, Karen Hogan. The report identified data sharing problems related to the vaccine surveillance and at FAC that were raised in previous audits. Quote, in the 2021 audit, we reported that the agency did not have regulations for the collection, use, and disclosure of public health information, and that it had not finalized with its provincial and territorial partners which elements of health information should be provided to whom and in what format, close quote, says the report. So yeah, they just shot from the hip. That's what I saw too. They were out there on the news saying we're monitoring people's cell phone data. It's okay though because it's anonymized, and I think everybody kind of went, "What do you mean you're monitoring people's cell phone data and to see where they're going?" And because people went out to the country in contravention of their orders, they said, "We're just going to continue doing this. The beatings will continue until morale improves." With no data to support this idea that any other policy would actually work in terms of reducing spread or mitigating harm. Back to the article. It added the issue was still present in the 2022 audit, and this affected fact sharing of, quote, detailed case level safety surveillance data with Health Canada, as well as with the World Health Organization and vaccine companies, close quote. Yeah. That sounds ominous. I don't want these people having any of my personal data because the next thing you know, it's in the hands of the CCP. All right. The Auditor General's recommendation included that FAC work with provinces and territories to better share vaccine surveillance data among themselves, obtain access to the vaccination adverse event system, and to implement the Pan-Canadian Health Data Strategy, PCHDS. FAC said it agreed with the recommendations and said that it would, quote, engage with the provinces and territories in an effort to allow it to release more granular data to the World Health Organization and vaccine companies as needed, while recognizing the importance of protecting patient confidentiality, respecting privacy laws, and supporting accurate interpretation of the data. Close quote. So I have the same concern, I guess, that they're going to do the same thing, even if it's anonymized data in terms of, how many people are up to date on their boosters. Are they going to start using that to impose, quote unquote, health mandates as punishment again? So on the PCHDS, Health Canada spokesperson Sleeman says it doesn't seek to, quote, to create a national data collection program or a technology system or platform, close quote. Quote, rather it would facilitate the creation of a new interoperable enabling environment to support the creation of a world-class health data system, close quote. Duclos said in a press conference on December 14th that having provinces agree to a deal on health data sharing was one of two big pieces, in quotes, to have the discussion on health transfers go forward with the provincial premiers. Quote, there were two key plans, one on supporting health workers and one on modernizing our health system, including having a modern health data system in Canada. We were prepared to approve those plans and to make some public, but we were asked by the premiers not to do so, close quote. Duclos said about a meeting with the provincial health ministers held in early November. Transparency in Canada. The minister said Canada's health data sharing is not adequate and could put lives in danger. Quote, when people arrive at the emergency and the doctor is not able to know whether these people have been vaccinated, what medicine they're taking, or what recent tests they took, it puts in jeopardy the quality and sometimes the safety of the care they receive, close quote, he said in French. Wouldn't the emergency doctor have access to health records? I mean, don't they have, they have like a health record system, don't they? It's actually something that the doctors can access. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong out there, guys. Okay, so they mentioned they do in the military. I've seen it. Okay, so I guess I've ATIP'd it. So the mention of the vaccination status of patients in the context of federal government's intent is to obtain data from provinces raised the question as to what exactly Health Canada is seeking to obtain. Selena says FAC is, quote, seeking to improve the sharing of aggregate vaccination data based on standardized/harmonized data fields in order to allow comparability and consistency, close quote. Does that even say anything? It's a lot of adjectives and not too many nouns. The agency says it is also working with the provinces and territories on strategies to share data on vaccine coverage across the country. And that's Noah Chartier. And he's one to watch. No, it's been really good throughout this whole thing. So, okay. Here we go. Real Andy Lee is here, and she says, I've received an important update from the government on the Canada Infrastructure Bank. So she's sharing her latest result from her access to information requests, and it's 9 pages of blanked out documents with just a few, meaningless, canned phrases that you would see in any government document. That's all you're allowed to see, folks. Transparency in Canada. Okay. Dr. Asim Malahorta. Not sure who he is, but breaking. Leading NHS campaigner and GP, this guy, calls for investigation into whether the mRNA jab is contributing to the excess deaths. All right, so I'm just going to let him say this here, and this is a lot of what I've been talking about too. The fact of the matter is the signal that we're trying to get through all of this noise, once we filter out the noise, the signal that we really need to be left with, that we need to focus on here is all-cause mortality. So the death rate is up. It went up after the vaccine rollout. Prior to November, December of 2021, the WHO's own definition of a pandemic had 2 criteria listed, and one of those criterion was the all-cause mortality 15% in excess of a normal year. Now they removed that criterion, and all you need now is just a new pathogen. And the fact of the matter is, it took StatsCan forever to release the stats on all-cause mortality for the pandemic year of 2020, and we still only got like 5.6 to 5.8% in excess of a normal year. So it's like a harsh flu year, basically. So we're not talking about that. And what we're also not talking about is that death rate, all-cause mortality, total number of deaths in Canada is up more so after the vaccine rollout than it was before. So more people died after the vaccines rolled out than before the vaccines rolled out. So anyway, it's all starting to come out. It seems like it's coming out on British television. We covered that guy who he was the physician. He's a very well-known, I don't know what his position or title was in the UK, but yeah, he just kind of slipped it in there. Yeah, I did a published study on this and everything. I have a paper, and it concluded that it was the mRNA that killed this man. So, and then he was challenged, of course, by the propagandist who was masquerading as a reporter, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, so this is how science really works, and it's real." So. Here we go.
In excess deaths around the world. If obviously there are problems with the National Health Service, as we know, but we're seeing excess deaths around the world. Germany, all over Europe. Actually, Sweden has some of the lowest increase in excess deaths. What would you attribute that to? Are we allowed to talk about the vaccine and the harms possibly caused by it?
Well, you know, in health and in science, you should never shut down or, you know, try to censor debate. You know, the point you raise about excess death in other countries that haven't faced the same challenges as the NHS need to be explored. So we need to look for commonality, common factors, but the whole atmosphere of censoring dissenting voices, I totally object and oppose. So, you know, we need investigation. We don't need silence. We need attention. We need independent scrutiny of the figures, and we need some answers because, you know, I'm hearing concerns from reputable voices in terms of the damage done by the vaccine. We know that Pfizer was very secretive about their raw data. We know reanalysis of the raw data has found that within their own figures, there was a 1 in 800 chance of serious adverse events. Now, if that is contributing in some way to these excess deaths, we need to know about it. The sooner the better.
Well, that's very brave of you to say, and thank you for doing so. If we could rewind back to the beginning of this pandemic and the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I should clarify. GB News, I think, is a little bit more right-leaning. I think I may have given the impression that this was mainstream, but I think that's exaggerated to say that the GB News is mainstream over there in the UK. But anyway, we're seeing signs, more signs of the dam breaking here. So it's always good to highlight those successes. And it looks like I'm back to my philosophy meme. All right, guys. So not too bad. 126 today. All right. I'm hopefully getting a little better at this, just banging this thing out. I think the important thing right now is just getting the content out there. I think the algorithm seems to like the content. And while I haven't been doing it for the entire time that I'm doing this, I'm going to say, you know, smash that like button, hit the share, whatever you got to do, and get this stuff out there because we are being suppressed. We knew it. We could kind of see it early on. But it's kind of the point now where it's pretty far beyond, especially with Facebook. So I'm doing my best to kind of, you know, just share it to a bunch of groups and things like that to beat that algorithmic suppression. But anyway, it is what it is. This is the battle space, and till next time, guys, I'm gonna say stay frosty and stay safe.